They can just repeat that for me. Om Ajnanatimrandasya Gyananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitamena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamakyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindubhyev cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Namo Namo Aniruddhaya Hishikeshendriyatmane Nama Paramahamsaya Purnaya Nibrutatmane Swarga Pavarga Dwaraya Nityam Suchi Sade Namah Nama Hiranya Viryaya Chaturhotraya Tantave. Hare Krishna. So, thank you very much for joining us this evening. After a very long hiatus, perhaps 3 years, close to 3 years, I've come back again, and I was thinking that I could do a few series of planned lectures, more in terms of progressively moving from one topic to the other, but then they're all connected. And they have an objective. The objective is for us to be able to resolve certain issues which we as a community of devotees face, and perhaps that which I face or I have faced and have resolved in certain ways and have found a few ways to do so. And I just wanted to share the same with everybody else so that you could take advantage of, my experience. They say that you don't reinvent the wheel. You take advantage, because then that saves you term, you see. So that's the whole objective. So I was thinking that one of the most predominant obstacles which people face is in understanding the goal of the process of Krishna consciousness. Now, let's understand Krishna consciousness from a higher level. Let's understand what's happening in the world, and from that context, also understand where we are theologically, philosophically. It's very different. Okay, most people who are practicing do not realize their place in terms of where we are in the context of whatever else is happening out there. Now we are in somewhat of an interesting phase in the world. We are in an interesting phase in the world because there's a tremendous amount of dialogue on religion for the wrong reasons. But there's a lot of dialogue on religion. There's a dialogue on the similarity of religion. So there seems to be a lot of dialogue on what is the same and what is contrasting amongst religions. There's dialogue. We are not saying that the dialogue itself is effective, it's based on sound philosophy. There's a lot of dialogue. There's a lot of introspection. So there's a major mainstream dialogue. You open up any television station, you go to YouTube, you have channels where there's a tremendous amount of discussions going on in terms of, atheism versus certain religions. So there's like a broad understanding that every religion, when they talk to an atheist, speaks the same language, and then they also differ. But then there's also this understanding that Vedic theology, Vedic religion, as we know it, is spread throughout the world. It's an unusual phenomenon, which is not true a decade back, 2 decades back. It has just spread throughout the world. It started with the phenomenal preaching, which was done by Srila Prabhupada in the 70s, in 60s and 70s, where he opened 108 centers. That drew people to a certain culture. So there's somewhat of a cultural revolution, because you see singers mainstream singers from Germany. Mainstream singers, I'm talking about mainstream, where on YouTube, I do a lot of research this way, just to understand who's listening to what, to understand consciousness. That's a very good tool. On YouTube, you find mainstream singers who offer Buddhist and Hindu songs. The hits on those YouTube videos are 2 million, 3 million. There's broad spread, widespread appreciation of the music. And then the dress culture of the singers is very Vedic in certain ways. There's so much appreciation. Now, there's also been a shift because those days, Buddhism was not very well known. And then the Dalai Lama in the 50s, of course, when he moved out of Tibet and he came over to India, he had the opportunity now to travel around because everybody had to listen to him. So he started spreading around information about Buddhism and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of information that has come out in the past 20, 25, 30 years, 40 years. And as a consequence, now you find that Eastern religion is amalgamating itself with Western religion. There's a lot of dialogue. There's a lot of understanding. You find, unusual names across the board. They're not Krishna conscious, but then unusual names. And it's also because of the yoga scene, which has just erupted. So we have a very, very complex, set of circumstances. We have a complex set of circumstances in the world where there are a lot of people who are seeing that there's a lot of oneness or uniformity in religious practice. They're also seeing cultural differences. Okay, why is it important for us to speak about it today? Why am I talking about obstacles and I'm bringing up something which is somewhat of a very generalized topic? And the reason is because Krishna consciousness is very different from mainstream practice of religion. Okay, what is it that we do? Even in India, what is it which is so different about Krishna consciousness? The Srimad Bhagavatam does not mention Srimati Radharani's name even once. There is no other sampradaya other than ours which directly affirms and accepts and worships Srimati Radharani. The Sri Sampradaya, which is a very close approximation to the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, they do not overtly accept Srimati Radharani and worship. The Srimad Bhagavatam doesn't mention Srimati Radharani. And then Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, one of our prominent acharyas in the Bhagavat Marichimala, he speaks about Srimati Radharani and her mention in the context of indirect mention in the Srimad Bhagavatam, where there is someone else who is mentioning and they're referring to the topmost gopi. They don't mention the name of Srimati Radharani everywhere. But then we are in Gaudiya Vaishnavism so very focused on worshipping the deities as Shri Shri Radha Vrindavan Chandra, Shri Shri Radha Shyam Sundar, Shri Shri Radha Govinda, Shri Shri Radha Krishna. Right? Now, why is it that it was never mentioned? Please understand this. I'm coming up with a context. Why is it that it was never mentioned? It was not mentioned because it is the most confidential of subject matters. Please understand this. This is not for everyone. It is the most confidential of subject matters. It is the most confidential of subject matters. That is the reason why whenever something of great confidence is being shared in Vedic theology, it's not open, it's not very obvious, it's hidden. And as a consequence, there are only those who are very qualified can even approach the subject matter, and you need special instructors. You need people who have already practiced it at some point. Our acharyas in the Gaudiya Vaishnava line have specialized in an extraordinarily narrow version of Vaishnavism to such an extent that this is very, very confidential practice. That is the first statement that we would like to make. The reason I'm saying this is because you ought to recognize it, that if you are sitting here and if you've been in any temple, if you're initiated, even more so, if you're twice initiated, even more so, your responsibility is extraordinary because you are being given entrance into a line, a philosophy, a practice which is very confidential. It's not usual. It is not something that you find every day. You don't find it in broad mainstream religion. You don't find it in mainstream philosophy. You don't find it anywhere. So you are being given entrance into something so confidential that our acharyas, the ones, even those who are very qualified, It is not that the Sri Ramanujacharya's line, they didn't know. They were very qualified because there were many mellows, even the highest mellow of rasa, of Shringar rasa, the highest mellow of relationship with Krishna, in the confidential mellow of being, the beloved. It was shared in the Sri Sampradaya. There are acharyas who have written about it. But they never ever mention the name of Srimati Radharani. But then we openly worship. Our open worship should not be taken so much that it is commonplace. Please understand that. I'm preaching, or rather I'm talking, I'm teaching, I'm sharing to a group who have been bought into a certain philosophy which is very confidential. You might think that there are many devotees. You might think it is easy to go and then walk into a temple where Srimati Radharani sits with Krishna. It's very easy to see pictures of this kind. It is very easy to see pictures of what's behind me. It is very easy to see Sri Radha Madhav in Mayapur. Why is it so easy? It's because Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu 500 years back, it is literally said that he broke open the storehouse of knowledge. What did he do? He broke open the storehouse and he distributed something which is extra confidential so openly that everybody could have access to it. Okay? Everybody could have access to it. Now, you all are educated. Practically everyone here is a professional. Some of you are very well educated. It's not very difficult for you to recognize that if you have strategy, you work in security, if you think you can work with your PhD in security and secure knowledge, and then you can secure data, don't you think Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would have thought of how to secure the most confidential knowledge while distributing it on the streets of India, throughout the world, by everyone? He did. Mahaprabhu had a strategy. On one hand, he distributed and he said, go and distribute. Go on the road and chant the holy names. Go road to road, Harinam. Because Harinam is who we are. We are Sankirtan. That's who we are. Underline the word Sankirtan. We are a Sankirtan movement. We go out, we take the kartal, we take the mridanga, and then we bang on the mridanga, we do the kartal, and then we are proclamating the holy names. We are spreading the holy names. That's our movement. It's very unusual that he said, go and spread the movement, but yet the movement itself is extraordinarily confidential because it's not mentioned anywhere. It's mentioned particularly by a certain sect of acharyas. Okay? Now, where does the confidentiality come from? How is it enforced? This is very important. How is the confidentiality enforced in our system? We share the most confidential practice which is not accessible to anyone. How is it enforced? It is enforced by a very, very powerful process that weeds people out as efficiently as the truth is being distributed. Does it make sense? If you're going to be giving something so potent, you're also going to be having a system that removes those who are unqualified to go further. So do not ever think that this process does not have checks and balances. It has many checks and balances. They are not fully obvious. They are not seen by us. And these checks and balances practically isolate those and remove those who are disqualified because they fail to observe the etiquette required to engage in something very confidential. Do we understand now as to where and how the checks and balances are going to come in? So do not ever assume that this is something which can be practiced by everyone. Please do not assume that this is religion. This is not religion. There was nothing Indian about Srila Prabhupada. There is nothing Indian about Krishna consciousness. Why is it that we think it's Indian? It's because in India, not now, ages back, the culture very closely matched that of the spiritual sky. As a consequence, that section, that place in the planet appears as if it's culturally attuned with Krishna consciousness. There's nothing Indian about Krishna consciousness. There's nothing Indian about Goloka. No. Do not get into the misnomer. It actually belongs to the whole world in one sense. It so happened that in India, we approximated. This is 500 years back, 600 years back. Now, We have lost that as well. Okay, it's very difficult if you go to India to find proper practitioners, or rather, you can find them, perhaps more than you would in the States or somewhere else. But it's very difficult to actually think that India was a part of the spiritual sky. So there was nothing Indian about Prabhupada. My spiritual master was American. There was nothing American about him. You see, he had the ability to inculcate and deposit transcendental faith in my heart. And I'm from deep down in South India. So what could have been American about him that he could inculcate deep Vaishnava faith in my heart? There was nothing American about him. He was a personality who had very deep connections to the spiritual sky. So was the case with Srila Prabhupada. He had very deep connections to the spiritual sky. So these personalities who come and connect us to the spiritual sky are confidentially connected. They're able to connect us. There's nothing American, there's nothing British, there's nothing black, white, Indian about anyone who is distributing Krishna consciousness or practicing it, for that matter. Because Krishna consciousness has no boundaries. That's the reason why people can just pick it up. Okay? Culturally, we have nothing to do with it. Okay? There is nothing. In one sense, we believe in American culture. What is American culture? American culture, all the amendments, believe in liberty. We believe in 100% liberty. When Srila Vyasadeva was composing and compiling the Vedas, when he was writing down the Puranas, he wrote Puranas for the mode of goodness, he wrote Puranas for the mode of ignorance, he wrote Puranas for the mode of passion. Why did he write literature for different levels of consciousness? It was because people could access the literature. So we believe in opening out and giving an opportunity to everyone. And so everyone can come and partake in it. So we believe in the principle of liberty. So in that sense, yes, we can say that we are American. Right? We are more American than the forefathers, the founding fathers of America. Right? In one sense. Because there's a whole strategy of giving equal opportunity to everyone as a part of our theology. There's a whole strategy in our books. There's a strategy of Vyasadeva, one person writing for different levels of consciousness, opening out, knowing very well that everybody can't take up everything. So everybody needs something special. So let me write for different people in such a way that they all come and then get plugged in at different levels, and then slowly they pick up and reach the level which they need to. This was strategy. This was transcendental strategy. Okay? So let's understand where we come from. So this very confidential subject matter has been given to us, and this very confidential subject matter also has certain checks and balances. The checks and balances are that you are going to be excluded very efficiently as easily as you come in. Okay? Now, why is it that we face obstacles? I'm going to read a verse from the Bhagavad Gita to show you what is expected. And then we can study the challenge that we face as we exist in this world. So we can look at it in contrast. Okay, what is expected? Now, one moment. It's in the 4th chapter. Those of you, if you have copies. No. One moment, I'm sorry, I'm just picking up the verse. Yeah, it is verse 4.24. It is, please repeat after me so that we get into it. Brahmarpanam, Brahmahavir, Brahmagnav, Brahmanahutam, Brahmaivatena Gantavyam, Brahmakarma Samadhina. Translation: a person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities, in which the consummation is absolute, and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature. What is it which is key in this verse? It is saying a person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom, which is our goal. Srila Rupa Goswami said, Anya Bilashita Shunyam, Jnana Karmadi Anabratam, Anukuliyena Krishna Anushilanam, Bhakti Uttama. Uttama Bhakti, which is practiced, is Anukuliyena Krishna Anushilanam, which means one has to proceed and there has to be pravarti, there has to be increase towards Bhakti Rasa, so that we follow Krishna in a favorable manner and then keep Krishna right in the center and are able to effectively serve him. Before that, what is it which you ought to do to reach that condition? Anya Bilashita Shunyam. There cannot be any other objective. Anya Bilashita Shunyam. Shunya is zero. There can be no other objective other than wanting to do that. Jnana Karmadi Anabratam. You give up the objectives of wanting to enjoy with your body. Give up the objective of wanting to eliminate your suffering, because that is also, in one sense, trying to negate or move away from the circumstances of life. Okay? Anya Bilashita Shunyam, Jnana Karmadi Anabratam, Anukuliyena Krishna Anushilanam, Bhakti Uttama. This is the definition. Now, in Krishna consciousness, full absorption, when is it possible according to this verse? According to this verse, full absorption is possible because of full contribution to spiritual activities, in which the consummation is absolute and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature, which means that one has to be completely absorbed in their identity of being a servant of Krishna in the spiritual sky. Okay, where do you work, Proveen? Yeah, so you are completely absorbed when you're in Bloomberg as an employee of Bloomberg, correct? Someone else here would say they work for Citigroup. Complete absorption in being an employee of Citigroup while you're at Citigroup. Wherever you are, Bank of America, wherever you are, you're completely absorbed in that particular identity of being an employee of a certain organization. When you come home, you're a husband, you're father, so on and so forth. Son, brother, as the case may be, if it's relevant, if it's applicable. Now, what is to be understood is that these identities themselves come to us quite easily. But it's very difficult for us to be in Bloomberg or Citigroup or Bank of America under pressure and understand that we are servants of Krishna. Very difficult, because we take into that particular environment. And this is so primarily because we haven't reached the point of becoming fully absorbed in understanding our identity. It's very important for most of us to identify who we are. We know philosophically that we are servants of God. We know philosophically that we are servants of Krishna. But then we also use our limbs in the service of Krishna. We chant the names of Krishna to glorify him on a daily basis. But we really do not know that specific piece of information which tells us that I'm related to Krishna in such a way, that precision. You see, when you go to Bloomberg, you are precise that this is my role. These are the activities that I'm supposed to perform in this role. This is where I sit. This is whom I'm reporting to. This is the expectation in my role. We are not clear on that part. As beginners, we are not clear. We are merely clear that we are servants. And as a consequence, it's very, very generic to the point where the moment you step away from an environment such as this, or the moment you step away from an environment such as at the temple, we have a tendency to be overpowered by our other identities. So the moment you go to work, it's very difficult to remember consciously that I have an identity where I'm a servant of God. Very difficult. Very difficult, almost impossible, unless you have reached the point which is being mentioned here in this verse. Okay? Arjuna had no issues. Arjuna had absolutely no issues on the battlefield, where he was able to remember after preaching by Krishna, he was able to remember that he was a servant of Krishna. What did Krishna say? Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayasmi masuchaha. Sarva dharman parityajya. So what is dharma? Duty is born out of relationships. If you do not have an identity, and you do not have an identity and relationship with someone, you will not know what your duties are. If we do not know that we are the father of a child, what would prompt us from within to perform duties towards that child? Why would we do so? So there has to be knowledge that, number one, I have a relationship. Number two, you have to know the precision on the relationship as to what kind of relationship it is. And once you know both of those, then you can start defining duties in such a relationship and you start acting towards those duties. We don't have that information. Full absorption in Krishna consciousness is to finally bring us to the point of being able to know that precise information of who we are. Okay? Otherwise, Anukulena Krishna Anushilanam is not going to happen. We are not going to favorably keep Krishna in the center and ensure that we are satisfying his senses. So, what is the purpose of Krishna consciousness? The purpose of Krishna consciousness is to bring us to the platform of being able to completely understand who we are in relationship to Krishna. Okay? The opposite is occurring. So, what is required here? A person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities. Which means, if you take your example, your going to Bloomberg should also become spiritual activity because you have to be fully contributing to spiritual activity. It is possible if you fully understand that you are a servant of God, even when you go there, just as much as you understand that you are the husband of such and such, Mataji, then you are the father of those two girls. So you understand that. You don't forget that when you sit at Bloomberg. But it's not easy to remember that we are servants of Krishna because we don't know the specifics of the relationship. The identity is not known. And that is precisely the challenge we face in executing Krishna consciousness. Now, why is it a challenge to be in material universe and then face these obstacles? You see, 300 years back, around 300 years back, perhaps 400, 500 years back, close to the time of 16th century, there was a philosopher. There were many philosophers during those times. There was a lot of, renaissance, you can say, in European thinking. There was a lot of renaissance overall in the world. And there were thinking processes that were introduced into the world in academic circles. Remember this. Why am I saying this? Is because you got to really understand why we are struggling. Okay, again, I'm coming back to obstacles. Why is it that devotees are struggling? Number one, we are struggling because we are not really paying the price that is required to be part of a confidential process. We are not. We have not understood the importance of how important and grave and how secluded our process is. We have not understood that. Number two, we have not understood material energy. So we are talking about material energy now, and material energy in itself is such that it has been shaped in a certain way. Okay? 500 years back, there was philosophy in the West which introduced very clear concepts that science, or rather pratyaksha, one should observe and learn. Empiricism, the whole concept of scientific methodology was introduced 500, 600 years back in Europe. It became a part of Cambridge, became a part of the real high intellectual circles. It was well documented. It was passed on to the Ivy League, the big universities here in America. It was passed on. So it was all very much a part of culture to understand that one should question and not accept, and one should be able to observe results, don't jump to conclusions. So that particular shift in thinking occurred around 5, 6 centuries back. Okay, this was the first issue which started shifting Western thinking. And I'm saying Western thinking because it was introduced in the West. But in reality, today's world, there is no distinction between West and the East. There is no distinction because it's all one platform of consciousness. Now, the second effect that took place was economic theory. The economic theory, which was followed in the West, which now India has adopted fully, was introduced predominantly. The father of modern economic theory is Adam Smith. It was introduced several centuries back. His philosophy centered around the fact that if you're selfish, you would be able to proceed and then build society which is going to be very functional and efficient, which is the complete opposite of spiritual philosophy where you are asked to be selfless. He gave this philosophy saying, as long as you encourage selfishness and then you encourage the motives of human beings to achieve selfish ends, they will be able to achieve those. Okay? The biggest thinkers of the modern financial markets, economic theory, they all visit a small Scottish town every year to pay tribute to Adam Smith. Alan Greenspan, he has visited, I've read about it. He made a visit to Adam Smith on his birthday. They go to Scotland. They pay a visit to him. Now, the point which you're trying to make here is we are in 2015, 2016, but the theory that was floated around 6 centuries back is dominant in modern thinking processes in the universities. When the financial crash took place in 2007, 2008, all the business schools questioned and started questioning what they were teaching to their students because they found that most of their assumptions were wrong about what they thought. Okay? So the Western world as we see it today, and as a matter of fact, because there is no distinction, the West and the East, the whole world, is today an academic experiment. Please understand this. There's complexity. Today it's an academic experiment across the board. Nobody knows what is going to work. No one is very clear in the markets, be it in the Federal Reserve, be it in the European reserves, wherever they may be. Nobody is clear. Why? Because their foundational theory was completely overturned, and now they are experimentally trying to come back and re-establish themselves. Okay, don't kid yourself thinking that things are okay. They're not. I'm not trying to throw the fear into you. It's a fact. It's a fact. There's a great deal of uncertainty because people have not fully understood how markets are going to behave. Why? Because everything got overturned in certain ways. Thinking process gets challenged. If they don't have the ability to reinvent, okay, they're going to have problems. Okay. Now, what is it that we need to understand further? Everybody knows Darwin's theory of evolution. Everybody knows that because the children are studying that. Now, the Darwin's theory of evolution practically says that, in one sense, there was no creator. He doesn't say that openly, but he practically says that there is absolutely the evolution which is occurring is a matter of the objects themselves. It's an evolution of matter as opposed to an evolution of spirit. There's no creator involved. That's the conclusion. Okay. Now, one of the main things which is happening here, why am I mentioning all of these theories? Why am I mentioning this, and how is it related to obstacles that we face in devotional service? You got to realize that you are in an environment when you step out of the temple. You are in an environment when you step out of home, which is built on and which is foundationally built on these principles. They don't believe in God. They have difficulty. They don't believe in the matter of faith. They act more in terms of analytical reasoning. They don't believe in so many different theories and so on and so forth. They are asking for proof, which has got nothing to do with being able to take things up. In other words, whatever is required and whatever is conducive for the development of spiritual knowledge in terms of you being able to develop faith. When you go to work at 7 in the morning, 8 in the morning, you take your little buses and your trains and we go to work, we are being philosophized in an environment which is the complete opposite of what we ought to be. Do you understand that you're going every day into an environment which is surcharged with the lack of faith? Because that's your neighbor. That's people who are across. Americans are God-fearing. Okay? I think the statistics show that 70% of Americans believe in God. There's no doubt about it, that America, amongst these so many different countries, has a predominance of belief in God. There's no doubt. But how much is the faith in? 70% of people who believe in God in America believe they're going to go to heaven. They believe that they're acting in the right way so that they could go to heaven. The point which I'm trying to make here is that there is a certain faith above, but it is not deep enough. There's a greater level of obfuscation of knowledge at the level of what should be done, what shouldn't be done. Okay? There's a greater level of imprint in the minds of people that faithlessness is better. You better question in a certain way where you believe in your analytical side. You better believe the numbers. You better believe in pratyaksha. You better see. Seeing is believing. All of this is a part of the culture that you're plugging in when you go from 9 to 5. Can you help it? Maybe not, because you have money, bills to pay. We can't help it. So every morning, you sit for 2 hours and you chant. We sit for 2 hours and we chant. And we end up doing the opposite 2 hours later. So there is a 180-degree turn because we are plugging into a scenario of lack of faith. Do you understand? You're going into an environment where the opposite of who you are is prominent. And you're getting energies imprinted on you. And then you come back home in the evening completely drained, and you start all over again trying to build your psychological strength and your spiritual strength and so on and so forth. Devotees practically do a 180-degree turn every day. Every day there's a 180-degree turn because we end up doing or being exposed to certain environments. Being exposed to environments does not mean that you go there and sit. Being exposed to certain environments means you get paid, okay? You get paid by an organization which is perhaps has a culture which is non-conducive. So there are karmic reactions. This is what this verse is talking about. Brahmarpanam, Brahmahavir, where the consummation of activities is spiritual. The verse is saying that whatever you do, if it is all connected to Krishna, then there's nothing to worry about and you will make progress. Now, what we do for most part during the day is the opposite of this particular verse from the Bhagavad Gita. So as a consequence, there's a 180-degree turn on a daily basis. How long do you think you're going to last, or we are going to last, of a 180-degree turn? If there is going to be a curveball that is thrown while you're in the field, while you're weak, you're going to drop the ball. It happens to us. If there is going to be a crisis professionally, devotees drop the ball. The first thing that they hang to the door is a chanting bag. I'm overwhelmed. I can't chant. I don't have time. I got to figure things out. If there's a problem with relationships, the chanting bag goes to the side of the wall. Okay, let me figure that out first. Let me figure out my economic problems. Let me figure out the health problems, so on and so forth. The point which I'm trying to make here is we have very little to start with. Very little is accumulated because there are 180-degree turns on a daily basis. And then there is this overwhelming situation in life, and a crisis in life is promised because you're in the material world. Everybody has a crisis. Everybody has to go through a crisis. And I'm not, wishing bad. It's a fact of life. Everybody has to go through a crisis to grow up in this material world. As a consequence, when we go through this crisis, whatever little, energy that we have accumulated spiritually, we tend to deplete it much faster. And then we find it very difficult to come back. Because when you experience negative things in life, it's very difficult to shake off those experiences. The impressions on consciousness, on the chitta, is very deep. It's difficult. It's an uphill climb. Your faith is questioned. Now, this is the issue. So now what is the biggest problem that we face here? The biggest problem that we face here is, number one, most part of a week, most part of a day is involved in activity which has nothing to do whatsoever with the goal of Krishna consciousness. Okay? And imagine coupling this with a week process of sadhana. Look at this combination. So there's weak sadhana, plus you have an overwhelming environment, and then you have certain circumstances of life which can completely, confound even someone who is strong. So this combination makes a recipe for disaster. It's not welcome. So what am I trying to say? The first point I would like to make here is that you belong to an exclusive club. Come to terms with it. You belong to an exclusive club, and the membership and the price that is required for you to be a part of it is steep. It's not cheap entry. We would not even know that we are being excluded. The entry is very easy. The entry is very easy. As we go around on the roads, we distribute prasadam. Jagannath rolls on his cart and we pull the rope, and then we chant. There is Harinam, there's books are being distributed. We pick up one of those books, we do some seva, the Sukriti begins, and because of the Sukriti, we have the ability to plug in to a very confidential, very potent process. But then our own habits, our environment, and our lack of planning, because we have no vision, most of us, of what is required in life. As a consequence, it's just a matter of time that we get weeded out. Because we get told that this is a confidential process. Come again. If getting into school, I was talking to someone this morning from London, and in London we have the Avanti school, the Avanti project. It's an exclusive project, and the person who I was talking to, he has a 3-year-old, and he was telling me that he must get back to London because he was elsewhere in Asia, and because he may not be able to get his 3-year-old, and he was saying it is so exclusive. It is so exclusive because it is extraordinarily oversubscribed because of the high quality education and the possibility. It's a national school system, very impressive in London. This is Krishna conscious school, but it's oversubscribed. And so the point is that if a school for a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old is going to be so exclusive that it's going to be so difficult for you to gain entry, right? What makes you think that the extraordinarily confidential spiritual process, which is going to gain entry, give you entry into the highest planet in the spiritual sky, you're going to be able to have a walk into it? What makes us think that? What makes us think that the weeding process is not powerful? Right? The weeding process is as powerful and efficient. That is the reason why I also say that do not be surprised about the number of people who leave Krishna consciousness. Because the potency of the process is such that you're going to be given a very potent, very confidential message. You have been given access to extraordinary mercy. And then the weeding process is also so powerful that the weeding process is so efficient that you're taken out much faster than you come in. You wouldn't even know that you're getting out. We might be thinking that we have a point to make. Trust me, you don't have any point to make. We don't have any points to make. Someone else is looking at us and saying, you're out. We are out even before we know it. So what is it which is required? One is to understand that we are members of an exclusive club. Be cognizant. Number two, it is to understand that we have very poor planning, as is evident from our complexities. Our complexities in life are showing us that we have very poor planning. Number three, we constantly go into an environment which is distinctly inimical to what we ought to be loving to do. Okay, so we come back to the temple environment, we come back into Sangha of devotees, just like a fish is thrown back into water. If you pick up a fish and you hold on to it, it twitches because it's so much out of water. You throw the fish back into water, and the fish feels I'm at home and takes deep breaths. We come back into Sangha, and we come back into Krishna consciousness. We come back into chanting in that manner because we feel grateful. So what is it we ought to do to start fixing it? Number one, at the very least, ensure that we take care of what can be done. Number one, Krishna consciousness is like an airplane. It's like an airport. We cannot operate on, you want to go to California from New Jersey, you cannot go from your house. You have to go to the airport. So similarly, Krishna consciousness requires that you need a favorable platform, which is the mode of goodness. It is guaranteed that the workplace that we go to is not in the mode of goodness. It is guaranteed. So how can we operate in the mode of goodness? The first thing any devotee should take care of in terms of obstacles is to ensure that understand what is the mode of goodness, what is sattva, and plug into it. What is it which you ought to do in terms of sattva? Sattva has to be matched with the 4 basic activities that we do. What are the 4 basic activities which every human being, at least those who are possibly involved in it, engage in? Everybody eats, sleeps. Those who are supposed to, they mate, and then they also defend. We all defend. We all do this. This eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, if we do not do it connected to sattva, we will not have the ability and the qualification to chant the holy names, to proceed further, and to make advancement. There is going to be absolutely no way that we can go from passion and ignorance, which is the most part of our day, into Shuddha Sattva, which is the spiritual sky. We need the mode of goodness. How many of us are planning for the mode of goodness in eating? How do you do so? First, you eat prasadam, food that has been sanctified, which has been spiritualized by connecting it with Krishna. It's a very simple process. The second, if you're not into spiritualized food, at the very least, be vegetarian. At the very least, eat from vegetarian aspects of cooking. Learn that and then do that. This is sattva. This is living the sattvic lifestyle. At the very least, because you're not going to be able to go beyond that if you're not going to at least very least be sattvic. Sleeping. Sattvic sleeping is all about getting to bed at a time which is appropriate so that we could wake up very early. In Vedic society, Sattvic sleeping is all about going to bed at 8:39 and then waking up so that we could participate in the early morning hours of Sattva. How many of us have heard this after coming into Krishna consciousness? How many of us? Practically every class we hear that this is an issue. How old are we that we have to constantly be told that you have to go to bed at a certain time and wake up at a certain time because the process is so special and requires this? How old are we? Are we children who have to be disciplined on a daily basis? Isn't it fascinating to see that we are all very well educated professional adults, but we have difficulty in following something very rudimentary, such as going to bed at a certain time and getting up at a certain time, and we have to struggle through, right? And then we need counseling to help with that on top of it. It's absurd, to say the very least. It's absurd. I'm sorry I'm giving you the sauce. I was here to talk about obstacles and I have to speak the truth. Otherwise, it's pointless. I don't want to be politically correct because I'm not running for elections. I don't care what I speak. I got to speak the truth, whether we like it or not. It may be unpalatable. It could be a bit strong, but it's a fact. How many times have we said this? That it's very simple. And this seems to be a small price to pay for you to be able to engage in the most confidential, exclusive spiritual process ever introduced on the planet. Small, small, small price to pay. Why is it so difficult for us to go to bed at a certain time? There are many secular people who have nothing to do with spirituality who have great discipline. I work with many people who are very disciplined. They have nothing to do with spirituality, nothing whatsoever. Then why is it that after so much knowledge, people who are distinctly spiritual, who have been given such confidential information, why do we struggle? It's an absurdity, to say the very least, that I need that extra half hour so I don't mind coming back into this dreadful world. Don't mistake me. The covers are very inviting these days. It's too cold. Okay, don't mistake me. I know it's very, very nice, but it's absurd to think that you want to, not go where you want to go because you want an extra half hour or you're not planning for it. Okay, mating in the mode of goodness. Mating in the mode of goodness. We are all adults here. Mating in the mode of goodness is to mate according to the principles of religion. I'm not going to elaborate there. To mate according to the principles of religion, to stay within the norms of what is recommended in religion, is the mode of goodness. Okay, Sattva requires that we don't deviate. And then defending. What is defending? Defending has a corollary, which is fearing. We are afraid, so we want to defend. And defending in Krishna consciousness is all about getting Sangha, association of devotees. We can never ever defend as an individual. We defend by getting the right association. What does it mean by a Sangha, association? Nobody likes to be alone. You see, loneliness is a very frightening disease for many. Many. I've spoken about this before. Solitary confinement in the prison is considered to be a punishment worse than being with other animals. Solitary confinement is considered to be a punishment. People don't like to be alone. They like to interact. Right? So our strength lies in being able to have Sangha of devotees who have similar aspirations so that they could enthuse us. Now, what is Sangha and what is defense? What is defense? What is defensive Sangha? Defensive Sangha is to take shelter and associate with those who are far more enthusiastic than us in their spiritual practice. We don't want to gravitate downstream to find someone who is less efficient. We want to associate with those who are more efficient, which is the case with anything you do in life. Otherwise, how are they going to inspire us? So this is fundamental. So the eating, sleeping, mating, defending, being done in sattva is a prerequisite for us to move forward. The reason why I'm not dwelling on this is because there is no point. These are habits. We have heard about it ad nauseum. You have heard about it practically in every discussion. I'm not interested in going into it. Then comes, some people have very, very complex lives. Okay, some people have problems which are so complex that they're challenged. In the future session, which is 2 sessions from now, we're going to talk about how to resolve those. Okay, in future sessions, in a couple of sessions from now, I'm going to talk about how to resolve complexity which is overwhelming. We are sitting here with apparently normal lives. Okay, there are many devotees who can't function normally. They don't have health. They have serious problems. They can't function normally around the world. So we want to know how to resolve issues which are so serious that they overwhelm us to the point of making us dysfunctional, where the environment is so complex that we're not able to act. Okay? Now, the other part to it is, what is the internal process? There is a certain internal process which is going to allow us to be able to clear out the extraordinary accumulation of dirt that happens while we are in the work process, when you're outside, when we deal with things in the material nature. There is going to be a process that's going to be shared in the following week, which will allow us to clear out our hearts and prepare us so that we are able to imprint the mercy of the holy names deeper. We're going to share it in the subsequent week. Okay? And finally, we're going to look at what was given to us by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The personality who gave us the goal, who gave us the process, also gave us the means to attain such. It's very distinct and it is very clear, it's lucid, it can be adopted by anyone. We're going to look at it in a subsequent week as well. Okay? So now I want to quickly summarize. We started out by saying that this is an exclusive club. We started out by saying that if you're facing challenges, it is because we are a part of an exclusive club. It means we are not measuring up to what is expected. Simple and straight. Then comes the next part. How are we not measuring up? What is the challenge? The challenge is because we are exposed to an environment which is distinctly the opposite of what we desire. And then the third part, what is required for the process to take off? You need sattva. And sattva is to be made available and engineered by our activities during the day. Everybody eats, sleeps, mates, and defends, depending on your social situation. So why not strategize to ensure that there's sattva? It's very easy to do so. The fourth part, despite all of this, some of us have extraordinarily complex lives. Okay, and this could be because of past life, karmic situation. It could simply be because of the environment that we are in. It could be very complex. How do you get out of that? We're going to talk about it in a subsequent session. The other part which we want to talk about is that if we go to work in an environment which is completely complex and difficult and challenging, how do you come back and then hold on to the beads and are able to chant quality rounds? What is the way to do so? I am a practitioner. I've practiced for several years. I've had my challenges. I've had my ups and downs just as anybody else. And by the mercy of my guru, by the mercy of the parampara, there was some amount of knowledge which was provided for me to be able to figure things out which I found was working. So I'm simply going to share aspects which I found useful in my own practice. So I have some deeper conviction in being able to share that. I'm not a theoretical person. I don't have the capacity for theory, right? I'm here specifically with the purpose of assisting the practitioners to be able to chant effectively so that we ultimately reach the platform of being able to fit into the definition of Anya Bilashita Shunyam, Jnana Karmadi Anavratam, Anukulyena Krishna Anushilanam, Bhakti Uttama. Uttama Bhakti is our goal, and then it involves two processes. It involves giving up a few things, it involves adopting a few things. So that is the definition of the verse by Srila Rupa Goswami. We want to be understanding what is to be given up and what is to be adopted. Both are required. We don't want to just give up. We want to give up and we want to adopt. Okay. So I guess I'll stop here and I will see if there are questions. Those of you who are online, there's a Q&A tab, and you could always write into it if you have questions. If you perhaps browse around on the Google events, you should be able to see it. The Q&A tab gives you the ability to write questions on that. Okay, and I can take questions here if anybody has any questions in what we have spoken so far. Can you speak up a bit? I'm sorry, because of children.
Why is there sometimes some devotees are disconnected from that environment because of something in their life? What's the reason?
Why are some souls disconnected from the environment?
From the Krishna consciousness, sometimes they are in. Why are they suddenly disconnected?
Yeah, good. Okay, the question which is being asked here is, why are some devotees or practitioners, why do they get disconnected from the environment they're in?
Against their will.
Against their will. Okay, now there are a couple of things. It is apparent that it is against their will, but it's not necessarily so. There never is a situation where we would find ourselves being put into a situation unless we are at the highest level of practitioners, where the person has given up the sense of free will. There's never ever a situation which is not a part of what we have manifested as our own desire. That's the first point. Number two, sometimes Krishna notices that even though devotees are trying and trying and trying for many, many years, they have desires to taste material nature in certain ways. They want to taste material nature. They have not quite given up the notion that there is something wonderful about material nature. And they could be attracted to many things. Some could be attracted to wealth. They could be attracted to women or men. In the case of women, they could be attracted in some ways. They are not really able to give up and process that particular desire and to kind of get it out of the system. And the only way for Krishna to engineer them being able to get it out of the system is to actually give them an experience of that particular desire. So he arranges for a circumstance where all of a sudden the devotee comes very close to experiencing, or rather experiences, that desire, which is the complete opposite of what should be done. So you suddenly find that the devotee is involved in a scandal. You find that he has practiced for many, many years. He's very senior. He's quite accomplished. He's chanting very well. All of a sudden, you find that he has fallen in love for something or whatever has happened. And then all of a sudden, it's all downhill. Why is this happening? It is happening because, number one, there were desires. And those desires themselves are being fulfilled. Good question that you're asking now. I said the process is very confidential and powerful. A powerful process has the ability to grant unwanted desires to weed us out. Because you're saying, give me this, give me this, give me this, give me service to the lotus feet of Lord Shri Radha Krishna. All of a sudden, you have something else going on in the heart, and the deities say, take this also. Here, try this. You want to eat leaves, but then you want a few thorns along with leaves. Try munching a few thorns along with the little fruits that you have. It is going to draw blood. You want to enjoy your own blood while you're munching thorns? It's up to you. Try that first. And then that devotee who is being pushed out because of these unwanted desires, they experience challenges. And then they develop humility to come back into the movement. Those devotees are glorious. They can become points of siksha to others because they have gone through this experience of a challenge. They have overcome and they have humbled themselves enough to be able to come back and say that, Krishna, I was wrong, you were right, and here I am back, and now I'm cleaner than I ever was. Such devotees should be honored. So we should never ever think that someone at any given time is bad or good. If they come back and they're consistent with the process, we honor them as much as they never left, because now they've come back with even greater knowledge and they can assist others effectively. Does it make sense? Yeah. Any other question? Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you very much, Prabhu, for giving wonderful points. So one of the points you mentioned is not paying the required price.
Right.
So if you can just elaborate, you did mention that we made our life complex, and we are not putting effort in something. You can elaborate more on that.
Yeah. One of the difficulties of Krishna consciousness, which is the difficulty of any spiritual process, is a lack of substantial experience. You see, we reposit faith in something, and then the faith turns into trust when we have positive experiences. So we reposit faith, and then what we do is that faith itself is on weak grounds. So the experience is very, very mild. As a consequence, the experience of extraordinary spiritual happiness, which is a part of Krishna consciousness, is not experienced by people who don't reposit full faith. As a consequence, what they do is they become very doubtful about the efficacy of the process. So they think, okay, let me try a little bit of Krishna consciousness. It doesn't work because I'm not really happy. Let me go back to doing what I was doing, get frustrated there, come back. Let me try a little bit, go back. So this process goes on back and forth. So what is the price which is being demanded? The price that is being demanded is exclusive faith, which is again enthused in the scriptures. When you read Srimad Bhagavatam, what are we trying to train ourselves into? We are simply reading Srimad Bhagavatam so that we can completely understand and gain knowledge of our own experiences if we deposit faith. Srimad Bhagavatam is full of personalities who have had complete faith. And as you keep reading Srimad Bhagavatam, understand what is faith and what the experiences are. You suddenly find Dhruva Maharaj in Srimad Bhagavatam. A 5-year-old child becomes determined enough that he goes and sits in an isolated forest and is able to chant the holy names. This is a 5-year-old child, very determined. Okay, what is the result of the determination of Dhruva Maharaj? Number one, look at the extraordinary circumstances. He leaves the palace as a 5-year-old. He's 5 years old, so he does not have any qualification by age. He is leaving the palace, which is protected. He's going into the forest. He's going into very difficult, unprotected circumstances. Number three, he does not have a guide. He just has determination. But what is the story that's coming out? Because of his determination, Krishna, who is in the heart of everybody, is in the heart of Dhruva. And he sees the determination, and he is sending his very special servant, Sri Narad Muni, saying, go initiate him, because he needs a guru. He is seeking me, so go initiate him, because he needs a guru. So someone who is very sincere in the heart, and they really want to make progress, help is made available because the super soul who is within is noticing the sincerity and making arrangements. And help is being made available. Okay? That's the first instance in the Srimad Bhagavatam of deep determination. Number two, Prahalad Maharaj. Why is it so important? He had age, which means, as you say, you grow older, you become wise. He didn't have that advantage. He was born into a family of asuras. Okay? He had an abusive father. And he had friends who were the opposite. He had gurus who were the opposite. He was determined, and he had such deep faith that Krishna reciprocated. And he was able to protect him under all circumstances. So that's again a story of faith, where you reposit faith, and faith is never repaid poorly. And that faith is going to come forth in manifold ways. So the real issue which we face in Krishna consciousness is that there is a lack of faith and determination. And faith is developed by being with others who are faithful. Faith is developed by coming in touch with stories of those who were faithful and were rewarded. So that's why Sangha is important. That's why Srimad Bhagavatam is so important. Both are so important to be able to make progress. Sure. Yes, Matthew.
We talked about defending one of the core activities and then corollary as fear.
Yes.
I just want you to elaborate more on the fear subject matter, root of this fear and how it reflects with after coming into Krishna consciousness or something.
See, Krishna consciousness is about love, loving Krishna. It's about prema, which is the highest kind of love. It's unconditional love, which is one gains when they come in touch with Krishna. And the opposite of love is fear. So one cannot really say that they're afraid, but they love someone. It doesn't make any sense. You cannot really love someone and be afraid of the person. You know, I love God, but I'm afraid of him. If you really love him and he loves you, why are you afraid? Right? It's a very strange psychological relationship where you say, no, I'm afraid of a person, but I love him. I can't, I love him, but, I'm afraid of him. So whenever we have fear, it means that we have moved far, far away from the message of Krishna consciousness. We have moved away. We are now steeper and steeper into tamas. As a consequence, we are experiencing the opposite of what is needed to be experienced. So what we need to do is to be able to sort out our fears. When I was initiated by my spiritual master, he wanted to know what my fears were. Okay? And the reason is that he could bless me in certain ways so that those fears could be removed. So he wanted to know in advance, that while the process of initiation was going on, he could, ready me in such a way that the fear could be removed. So the point we wanted to make was that if there is going to be fear, the fear itself is the mode of ignorance, because we also feel lonely, we're going through certain challenges, and we feel that there's a lack of support around. So the resolution for fear is to have Sangha, which is association of similar aspirants, but who are more advanced, who have the ability to take out, or rather overcome our fear with their potency. You see, they should have the ability. When you meet someone for guidance, when you meet someone for help, that person should have the ability to overcome our conditioning. Otherwise, they can get overcome by our conditioning. You see, that's the difficulty which most people face in the spiritual advisory cycles, is that, you can't really be an advisor in a spiritual context because, those who come to seek advice from you, they can overwhelm you with their mode of ignorance. Your own spiritual potency has to be such that you are able to overcome their ignorance and you are able to give them, support. So that is the methodology that is being given. Fear is a dangerous thing to have. And fear is a dangerous thing because it's a state of consciousness which is the opposite of Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is love and what we experience in the mode of goodness and higher, Shuddha Sattva. Fear is the mode of ignorance. So now we are already in a position where we are in the opposite end of the spectrum.
For the new devotees or upcoming devotees, how much the past life karma has effect upon this fear?
Everything. The past life and the present life. What we were, whatever we are today, is a sum total. It is an aggregate representation of our existence for millions of lifetimes. Whatever we are today is a sum total of the past. There's no doubt. Okay. So let me take a couple of questions online and then we'll get back. One moment. So if we have to deal with complex situation, if it is very difficult to focus on chanting the holy names, in this case, can we divert our focus towards other limbs like deity worship and Vaishnav Seva? The most important thing that we want to remember is that the first answer that I would like to give is deity worship is very powerful, but deity worship in itself requires one to qualify themselves through the process of chanting the holy names. One should not approach the deity with distraction. If one is overwhelmed by material circumstances to the point where they can't chant, then approaching the deity could create offenses which are far worse in their effect than the most merciful form of Krishna, which is the holy names. So my recommendation is that it is better for us to seek out ways and means to remove the complexity that we are in, to mitigate it in certain effective ways, and then act upon it, rather than thinking that we could engage in some other limb. Because the most merciful limb of devotional service is the chanting of the holy names. Okay, that's my answer to that. We will be talking about it in future sessions in greater detail. Now, one more question. Is defensive Sangha good for all kind of devotees? Meaning, if we think about defensive Sangha for ourselves, how will the new devotees coming to the movement benefit? Perhaps I'm not clear, because perhaps I should explain this. Defensive Sangha is for us to take shelter of those who are more advanced than us spiritually, who have put in the time, who are more experienced, and at the same time give our association to those who are coming in new. It happens both ways. It is not one way or the other. It doesn't mean that we neglect those who are newcomers and just take care of ourselves. We do both. We take care of ourselves by going to those who can assist us, and then we reach out to those who need help by giving them the help. And sometimes if we find that the newcomers themselves need association of people who are more accomplished, then we bring them to such association. Okay, so we're going to do both. We're not going to neglect those who are newcomers. Hope that answers your question. If not, you can always ask again. Yes, Mataji.
My question is regarding the fear and love together that we just talked. Right? We are the child to their Lord,
Right.
like father and relationship. Like it's the same way if I see the our kids, they have fear as well as love for us.
Right.
So together it exists. So when kids are doing something, wrong, or they know that parents can be offended. So same way when we are doing something, we think, oh, Krishna may or may not like it, but we have so many thoughts in us. We are not 100% clear. We just sometimes do it because we cannot. Our level is not that.
Right.
So it exists.
So okay. First, let me first debunk that. I have to first debunk it. I said I don't accept it fully. Okay. So first I have to sort that out. Then you can ask your question. Okay. So the comment which is being made here is that a child fears the parents and loves them too. Fears them in the sense that they don't want to upset the parents in certain circumstances, and also loves the parents. Okay. So the first point I would like to make is the child does not have fear. The child has love and is afraid that someone who loves me is going to be upset and I have to be careful. You have to make a distinction. We have to understand that. Okay, because they are completely secure in our company. It is just that they're afraid that this person has given me so much love. I don't want to upset him or upset her. Similarly, when we look at Krishna, are we afraid? The answer is no. We love him. And the love is so much that we are sensitive to his needs to the point where we think that, oh, maybe if I do this or do that, I may not be treating him the way he should be treated. So that's not fear, it's love. Okay? Fear is very different. Fear will not allow us to function. Okay? Fear would make us liars. So children, if they start fearing instead of loving, then they start hiding things, they become surreptitious, they become very devious, they do all kinds of things which the parents would not even recognize. Okay? That is real fear, and that has to be corrected. But this fear and combination of love is very different. I just want to make sure we are understood there. Go ahead now. What's your question? I've answered it? Okay, good. Makes sense to you, the answer?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Contemplate more.
You have to contemplate more. So it was not convincing enough.
I know.
No, it was. You'll contemplate more. Okay.
Prabhu,
Yes.
just continuing on the topic of fear.
Yes.
The fear of falling out of spiritual discipline or fear of unknowingly committing any unattachment.
Right.
Is that a valid fear? And is that something we can channelize to enable us to progress further in the spiritual path?
Yeah. See, we are not new age practitioners. Where anything goes. One shouldn't feel guilty. Where they also talk about, don't make me feel guilty. Guilt is bad for me. We are not that. Some amount of accountability is healthy. Just as the example that I gave her, the children feeling that they are accountable to the parents and they don't want to disappoint the parents. And as a consequence, they have to align themselves properly. That accountability is healthy. We don't want to do, we don't want to be away from that accountability. In that sense, your statement is completely valid that I'm accountable. I'm accountable to my spiritual master. I'm accountable to the process. I'm accountable to everyone who has given me whatever has made me what I am today internally. So, in that sense, I'm accountable at all times to Krishna. So, should I be intimidated, afraid? Yes, to the point where it's healthy, where I don't become dysfunctional and I don't make mistakes. Yeah, we have to be careful in terms of being able to distinguish the quality of fear in terms of the overall outcome as opposed to what is mundane fear, as in I'm afraid so much that I'm constantly intimidated to be in the presence of someone, being in the room with someone, because I really don't know if that person is going to do this to me, that to me, because I'm so afraid. That's a different story altogether. Then one can't function. Okay, so we don't want to be in that. And being afraid also has other connotations where losing faith in the existence of God makes one say that since He doesn't exist, let me do anything I want. That is the other side to it. I'm not accountable at all. Anything else? Oh, sorry. Yeah.
You mentioned most of the devotees come into this process and they're all materialists. It's not that we become pure right away. It's not a switch. In the process, there are material desires. Though you are trying sincerely certain things, the level of sincerity can be relative in the subject.
Right.
But there's still desires, which has potential. Since you mentioned the topic that it has potential to take away from this exclusive group
Right.
to that extent.
Right.
So how do we address that? How do we counter that to ensure that it's an organic progress?
The holy names, sincere chanting of the holy names, has the complete capacity to eradicate passion and ignorance. The elimination of passion and ignorance would automatically free us from unhealthy desires that are non-conducive to devotional service.
At times, when you read for enrounds, material desires do conflict. It's not that
It's a step-by-step process. It's a step-by-step process. It's a gradual process. It's not something which is going to happen overnight, right? So what we need to do is, first of all, come to an understanding of being sincere, saying, I know exactly what I need. Here's what is written. Okay, these are the aspirations I have. These are conducive for the process of Krishna consciousness. These are the aspirations I have. So we constantly evaluate our aspirations for the future and align them with Krishna consciousness. By doing so, the chanting and the other processes would aid us in reaching those aspirations which are conducive, and would allow us to weed out those that are not. Okay, you have
most
to.
of the time, my goal is fixed. I try to figure out how it can be conducive to Krishna consciousness.
Yeah, it is better to find out what you need for Krishna consciousness. Let me tell you something. Okay, perhaps I'll be more direct. Most people who have found a taste in holy names, they will aspire for nothing else. Okay? There are 4 qualities that are given. There would be no material desires. As a consequence, they would not be envious. As a consequence, they would be quite humble. They're not identifying with anything in this world. It doesn't mean that they exist in a vacuum. Okay? The purpose in the heart will be very clear that I want to chant. But I also want to serve. I want to be compassionate. So if I want to serve, I need resources. There's anyone who wants to lead, who wants to serve, has a realistic assumption that you cannot serve without resources, material, spiritual. So you build resources for the purpose of service. So there might be aspirations where you build certain resources for the purpose of service for you to be able to do so. In reality, no one who has found taste in chanting will ever have an aspiration for anything of this world. Okay? I'm going to be very direct with you. They wouldn't. So it's still a matter of developing the taste. It's just a matter of time. Now, those of you who are beginning to chant and who are yet to begin to chant, do not be afraid, okay, that you will have no desires, and as a consequence, oh my God, I can't enjoy in this world, and I don't know what is out there in the other world, and I'm going to be stuck. Don't worry. Yeah, that particular stage when you have nothing at all other than wanting to chant, trust me, you will have everything. You would have everything. Every demigod from here right up to the spiritual sky would be ready to serve you. But you would not want anything from them other than wanting to chant. Okay? The point which I'm trying to make here is that the holy names have the potency of granting liberation at the stage of offenseless chanting. They have the potency of mukti, offenseless chanting. When it is offensive chanting, there is bhukti. So most people who get into trouble are because they have material desires in the chant, and the material desires get fulfilled, and they get into trouble. Weeding, exclusive process which is getting weeded. Okay, we are in an exclusive process. Krishna says, you either desire me or you desire my separated energies. Okay, I am Bhagavan. I am the most wealthy. I am the most good looking. I am the most famous. I am the most knowledgeable, most powerful, most renounced. If you want to desire any one of these big qualities other than me, right, then I will give you that instead of me. So that's the unhealthy part. But those who are smart recognize that they don't want that.
So we should try to, as
You align yourself.
like eat meat, eat different, eat more proteins and try to chant, and it will weed out or it will make it.
Absolutely. So the point is, yeah, our sadhana of chanting the holy names is capable of everything. Liberating us from unwanted desires, granting us Krishna. If something is granting us Krishna, why isn't it capable of subduing Maya? Surely. It's very powerful. Yes.
So I was asked a question this morning at the temple. This person does not do 16 rounds. He came and asked me, should I go for Mangalarti or should I chant or read? And this convinced started, I tell him, read Bhagavad Gita 10 minutes a day. And then he came back today and asked me, should I be chanting or should I go to Mangalarti?
Okay, here's the deal. If
He works regular with office and all.
my personal recommendation, I'm a fan of chanting. But people who are in the beginning stages of Krishna consciousness, they need association. So perhaps what would work for that person would be to come for Mangalarti because he's enthused by Mangalarti, he's enthused by the deities, he's enthused by the Sangha, the Kirtan. He could sit there and do, some chanting and then develop his interest. And then slowly, steadily, he could increase it to the point where he is able to take a decision on what is optimum. Should I chant or should I go? Personally, if you ask me, when I wake up, I just don't waste any time other than chanting. Because for me, that particular time in the morning is so valuable that I just want to chant. I don't want to do anything else.
He's a very steady person.
Absolutely.
With our consciousness. He just needed advice. Should I chant or should I come to Mangalarti? And I didn't know.
First, if he is not chanting 16, he should chant, he should try and develop a taste for more rounds. And it should be done organically. He should not force himself to go from wherever he is, 8 or 4 to 16. That's not going to work. So what I'm trying to say is he should do things that are enthusing him to stay in Krishna consciousness while slowly, steadily developing higher taste for chanting. And then when he develops that higher taste, he can replace one with the other. That's the point I was trying to make. Make sense? You had a question?
Yeah. So probably you mentioned one of the reasons why devotees are struggling is they did not understand the material energies. So does it mean instead of having the knowledge, they still indulge in sense gratification?
The senses are very powerful and they get attracted to their objects very easily. So it is not a surprise that someone who has not found real taste in devotional service can succumb to the attraction of the senses. One has to be wary, one has to be careful. It is always better to understand how to protect oneself. Srila Prabhupada used to stand before deities. I'm talking about Srila Prabhupada. While he was traveling in the West at the age of 75, he used to chant before deities. And devotees used to ask him, Prabhupada, those days the approach was such that they could talk freely to him. What were you asking the deities? He used to say, I was asking and requesting Krishna that I should not fall down. This was Srila Prabhupada. So he was making a request to the deities saying, I should not fall down. Please protect me. Because material energy is so powerful, I can fall down. Of course, we understand that there is this humility. But the point which I'm trying to make here is that those who are in knowledge will have healthy fear of material energy. Healthy fear. They know Krishna is going to protect them. And they take shelter of the holy names. But they also know how powerful Krishna's external energy is. We don't fool around with Krishna's external energy. You don't.
Probably that fear is good. And
It's healthy.
That fear and that love for Krishna, it is out of love for Krishna.
Correct.
I was just trying to understand.
Okay, perfect. Your understanding is correct. Yes, Mataji.
Some days we struggle to chant and some days it goes easy. So why it happens? Is it when we are chanting, the time our desires are not so strong, or why the struggle on some other days?
See, the real issue is in terms of the devotees going one day good, one day bad, is that they have not really they have not practiced in a steady manner. That's the reason why it is so. It is not steady. You see? So until the steadiness comes in, the first and foremost rules that devotees have to practice is to be able to train their body. They should not worry so much about quality while they're worrying about training the body. So going to bed at a certain time, eating at a certain time in the night, waking up in the morning at a certain time, sitting at the same spot every day for chanting. The point is, that is the point which I'm trying to make. That's the challenge that you have to overcome first. Let's not talk about chanting. Let us talk about the challenge of steadiness in habits. If the steadiness in habits comes about where the physical body is trained, then you automatically have ability to control the mind in certain ways. When the physical body itself is giving many, many challenges because we are changing the routine on a daily basis, right? Or frequently once a week. So the mind knows that, okay, this week it is this. I just have to wait for a few more days and she will change it. So my mind says, okay, I know what's going to happen. The mind is not very... So the mind is going to not allow us to chant because the mind knows that our habits are not steady. But if you make an attempt to wake up at the same time, go to bed at the same time, and do everything steadily, the mind understands that it is going to function in a certain way. Saying, okay, they're going to wake up, they're going to go wash their feet, they're going to sit there, they're going to do this. Okay, I can't disturb them because this is the next thing that they're going to do. The mind gets used to it. It is the unsteady habits which force devotees from one day is good chanting, the other day is not good chanting because they go up and down. Does it make sense? Yeah, the body has to be fixed first. It is the body which is the issue. You see? Our problem is with the body. Once you fix the body, then we can start working on words, we can start working on the mind. So surrender is body first. Anything else? Okay, I think it's late. We'll stop here. there are no more questions, and then we could take questions later. So we can stop here. And thank you very much for coming. Next week, we will be touching upon how to flush out, clear our consciousness before we chant the holy names. Because, especially for those of us who are professionals who work outside, we come in with a lot of baggage. How do we clear out the baggage before we begin the day's chanting? That's going to be the focus the next session. Okay? Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
So we do one round of chanting.